Trump denies the accusations against him and throws a new round of zingers at the Clintons as her email leaks pile up.
There's a whole deal going on. We're going to figure it out. I always figure things out.
The Trump camp knows he's the underdog, so we'll look at the strategy to try to score a big surprise on election night. And John Wilson is back with his view. This is Money, Power, and Politics. With all the leaks, this would have been a terrible week for Hillary Clinton, but for the accusations hitting Donald Trump. Last week, we gave Trump credit for turning in a stronger debate performance in round 2, but we said there was one moment in that debate that could burn him down the stretch. And that's exactly what's happening tonight, and here's the moment we're talking about.
You bragged that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
No, I didn't say that at all. I don't think you understood what was said.
Here's his problem. Trump did in fact say that he made moves on women, kissing and groping them years ago without their consent. And even Rudy Giuliani, one of Trump's biggest cheerleaders, said that is a description of sexual assault.
What Trump is describing in that tape is sexual assault.
That's what he's talking about, you know.
And with that, Trump said two things that are coming into play tonight. One, he just said, you heard it, that he did not understand that kissing or groping without consent is assaultive. And two, he said he didn't actually do it, even though he spoke of it on that tape from 2005. Well, that appears to have compelled more women to come forward to claim that he kissed or groped them without consent. We can't substantiate it, but it dogs Trump nonetheless and may stick to him with some voters for two reasons. One, those women are describing the same sort of thing that Trump said that he did on tape. And two, Trump said that he didn't understand how doing what he described is sexual assault in the debate. Mike Flannery has a recap of the accusations and where they take us.
The two women told the New York Times they were stunned watching Sunday night's debate when Donald Trump said he'd only boasted of subjecting women to unwanted kissing and genital touching, that he'd never actually done it.
It was a real shock when all of a sudden his hands were all over me. But it's when he started putting his hand up my skirt. And that was it. That was it. I was out of there.
Jessica Leeds, now age 74, said Donald Trump's alleged assault forced her to leave the first-class section of a commercial airliner in the 1980s. Another woman told the New York Times she was a 22-year-old secretary in New York's Trump Tower in 2005 when the real estate mogul grabbed her, forcibly kissing her directly on the mouth, exactly as he boasted of doing to women in a 2005 videotape released last Friday.
You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait.
A Trump spokesman tonight tweeted this entire article is fiction, trivializes sexual assault, and it sets a new low for the media. Trump sought to focus on a 5-year-old email string involving a woman who's now communications director for Hillary Clinton. Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan, who's been at odds with Trump, agreed, saying the emails showed a, quote, staggering hostility toward conservative Catholics and evangelicals. Clinton staffer Jennifer Palmieri was at the Center for American Progress 5 years ago when a colleague emailed her that conservative converts to Catholicism were guilty of, quote, an amazing bastardization of the faith. They must be attracted to the severely backwards gender relations and must be totally unaware of Christian democracy. Palmieri's emailed response, I imagine they think it is the most socially acceptable, politically conservative religion. Their rich friends wouldn't understand if they became evangelicals.
They attack Catholics and evangelicals. Tell you what, anybody of religion, I really think you have to vote for Donald Trump, to be honest with you.
The new allegations of sexual misconduct against Trump will certainly complicate his outreach to religious voters. On the other hand, those new email revelations about Mrs. Clinton's staffers won't make it easier for her.
And the prior Clinton leaks show her speaking quite fondly of Wall Street interests in free trade across the hemisphere, something that the base of her party does not want. She also, of course, claimed to have two positions, one public and one private, because politics, as she said, is unsavory. Well, that might pull down her poll numbers, you would think, but Trump's woes have overshadowed that based on what we're seeing in the numbers. Check this out. Here's the Real Clear Politics average across the nation. Clinton is now leading by more than 6 points. And look at the movement over the past couple of weeks. At the start of this month, she shot up and Trump took a nosedive. Well, this week, we've said this is not over yet because there could be another striking turn of events, maybe an incriminating leak or something like that. You can always cite the old Dewey defeats Truman headline as an example of how Truman pulled off a shocker, then others could as well. But looking beyond 1948, Trump is in a very big hole. And statistically, no presidential nominee in that big of a hole has ever pulled out a win. Throughout the week, we've explained how and why the polls this year could be wrong, and we've shown you how they've been wrong before, most recently in Britain with the Brexit vote. But the polls were only off by around 4 points on Brexit. And Trump again is now down more than 6 in the polling average. To put it in sports terms, he's down at least a couple of touchdowns in the waning seconds of the fourth quarter, which means, yeah, he can do it, but it'll take a couple of onside kicks and Hail Marys.
I may be limping over the finish line, but we're going to get that sucker.
And so, to stick with the football analogy, Trump is throwing Hail Marys.
There's a whole sinister deal going on.
In other words, at this point, he's focusing on revving up his base. To the diehard Trump supporters, he's moved away from his focus on jobs and the economy that helped fuel his resurgence a couple of weeks ago, and now he's just throwing swings at his own party's leaders, and most certainly the Clintons.
Hillary Clinton is the vessel, a corrupt global establishment that's raiding our country and surrendering the sovereignty of our nation.
Well, Trump's hope in this is that he can get his base so excited about him and so angry at Hillary Clinton that they'll turn out in record numbers. And maybe Clinton supporters won't be as enthused and may not vote in such numbers. And with that, yes, he could pull off a stunner. But in doing this, he also runs the risk of turning off Republicans who were never fully sold on him. And he runs the risk of losing the few remaining late deciders who tend to be women who focus on pocketbook issues.
You know, I'd be concerned if I were on the Trump camp about some of these red states, not just Utah, but also Arizona and Georgia.
Yeah, we focused a lot on Arizona and Georgia and shown you why they could go either way. But we just heard Dr. Larry Sabato, one of the leading experts in election forecasting, say Utah is in play. That state's about as Republican as it gets. Mitt Romney won Utah by nearly 50 points. And guess what? A new poll from Salt Lake City's Y2 Analytics shows Utah is now up for grabs.
Republicans in Utah have been historically very loyal, but there are limits to loyalty, and I think Mr. Trump found them.
The new poll shows Trump and Clinton are tied at 26%, and independent candidate Evan McMullin is just 4 points behind at 22%.
Our strategy, because it's a 3-month presidential campaign, is to deny Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump a majority in the Electoral College.
Meanwhile, Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan is sounding alarms. He told GOP donors that Republicans lost nearly 24 seats when McCain got wiped out in 2008, and he said Trump is now doing worse than McCain was. In other words, Ryan is now worried that Republicans could take some big losses in the congressional races. Forecasts already give Democrats the edge in taking over the Senate, and Ryan is now fretting about the House. Again, it's been a wild year, and we could still see some more surprises in the closing days. Coming up, we'll show you how the war on terror could affect the race, and John Wilson weighs in with his view. So Clinton and Trump are caught in this tit-for-tat, hurling personal insults that have taken this race into the ditch. But if you look at the polls, voters care much more about the issues. Jobs and the economy are top on the list, followed closely by terrorism and national security. Well, all week we've focused on wages and jobs and what the candidates would change. Tonight we're focusing on where they stand and how they match up on national security. John Wilson will join me in just a moment to break that down. But first, we have some big changes in the war on terror. And Jane Metzler shows us how we're making some progress.
ISIS now on the run in Syria and Iraq. The terror group pounded by coalition airstrikes and a renewed offensive on the ground. Now down to an area roughly the size of West Virginia. But as ISIS continues to feel the pressure in Iraq, it's increasingly shifting attention to territory it still holds in Syria, bringing warnings about the risks of pushing the terrorists into one area too quickly.
ISIS will take advantage of its military and security presence on the western borders with Iraq to carry out terrorist and security operations.
But the liberation of Iraq may come sooner rather than later, with preparations to retake Mosul nearly complete. It's the last big city in Iraq still under ISIS control, and the White House says it's important to let the Iraqis take the lead from this point.
Those gains will necessarily not be nearly as stable as gains that are made by Iraqi security forces.
Meantime, there's also progress being made in Libya, where U.S.-backed government forces say they've got the last pockets of ISIS fighters trapped in an area near the Mediterranean coast, following months of intense fighting throughout the country.
We started our offensive today with the use of tanks and artillery. We are dealing with snipers, and we are making progress.
ISIS isn't taking its losses lying down, reportedly planning a new wave of suicide bombings and ringing Mosul with improvised explosive devices as government forces draw closer. In New York, Jane Metzler, Fox News.
This is John Wilson's My View Now.
And here he is, John Wilson. Thank you so much for joining us yet again.
You bet.
Hey, look, there was a Pew Research Center study done back this summer showing that by far the top two issues were the economy and terrorism. And now it is front and center. Who has the edge when it comes to the issue of terrorism right now, Trump or Clinton?
Well, it has to be Donald Trump. He's made that part of his campaign from the very beginning. So he has the advantage now.
Because he's a disruptor. And if you want change, if you don't like the way things are going, you associate Hillary Clinton with the current administration in which she served and Donald Trump as someone who talks tough and seeks to bring change.
You've seen her amend her approach to terrorism, too, with the latest cases of domestic terrorism, and that's what they are. We know that now. Her amendment is how much vetting is going to be required. She's now using the term enough vetting or more vetting, or she's avoiding the extreme vetting that Donald Trump is suggesting. But there is the obvious issue of vetting of particularly Syrian refugees, but others from countries that we're involved in wars now. You know, we've been involved in that more than we were involved in Vietnam.
Yes, sure. And when you look at the numbers, though, they can get a little confusing. In the polling, you have some polls that show that Americans clearly want a change of direction. That would seem to help Donald Trump as
Change
it relates
is the
to
word.
this issue.
Change is the word.
On the flip side, you ask them, well, who do you trust more on the issue of terrorism? And Hillary Clinton gets the edge. It's a slight one, but it's an edge nonetheless.
Why is that? Why does she have an edge on? Because she has the record that she does have is a record of, let's don't call it necessarily accomplishment to be political, or apolitical in this case, but we know who she is. The issue here with Donald Trump is we don't know who he is. We're not sure how far he's willing to go or what he's tempted to do or say, because he's so unpredictable about everything else.
And sometimes voters want an unpredictable leader when what they're doing is not working.
That is the key to this whole issue for me. Status quo is no longer acceptable. We do need to go in a different direction. Those people who are comfortable with doing that have to admit that Donald Trump is a leading candidate who is promoting change. However, where this is going to be decided, Craig, I think, and you know this as well as I do, it's going to be those undecideds now. And that runs, what, 10, 15%? Sure. We're not sure where they are yet. But we could see the largest turnout we've seen in years.
If you were advising both Clinton and Trump on the war on terror, what would you suggest each one of them change?
Well, I'm going to sound like a conservative here now because I'm kind of leaning with Lindsey Graham. If somebody is going to use a weapon of mass destruction, bomb, in a city, a county, or a locality in the United States, I'm about ready to declare them an enemy combatant.
Right. John, good information. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your view. Coming up, Charlie Belcher runs the Money, Power, and Politics mailroom. Okay, at the end of each week, Charlie Belcher works in a humor skit as he reads our viewer mail. But we're planning something special for tomorrow night, and Charlie focused on helping us out with that instead of reading the mail. So tonight, we have some of my favorite moments from Charlie's mailroom.
Charlie Belcher here in the Fox 13 mailroom. Yes, apparently I did such a good job answering Craig Patrick's mail. Now I'm in charge of delivering all of the mail here at Fox 13. That's okay. I'm fine with that. Besides, it gives me an opportunity to snoop and see what everybody's saying about me. Chewbacca Mom? How about Darth Dad? Think that'll go viral? They brought me on to get more viewers, and so far,
I don't think so.
Hasn't worked.
Really?
No.
This is all for you. Looky here. Come right on through. All right, right through here. And here you go, all tucked away. This is all you, your special place.
Wait! Well, Craig, I need a computer to answer email.
No, you're in the mailroom. This is Charlie's mailroom. The mail will come to you.
Look, why don't we just agree to disagree like we always do? Why don't we just agree that you're wrong like I always do?
Nobody reads mail better than you. Nobody tells jokes better than you. You can do this. Nobody wears that jersey better than you. No.
That's a 2X. Nobody else is going to fit in it probably anyway. I'm really hoping this goes viral.
All right, thank you, Charlie. And Charlie, by the way, is now waiting for the next batch of viewer mail. So please let us know what you're thinking. Our show's email address is mppmailbag@yahoo.com. We're thinking we have something special lined up for tomorrow night, 100 years in the making, and we'll give you a sneak peek when we come back. So a while back for our 50th episode, we did kind of a fake 50th anniversary special. Well, here we are creeping up on 100 episodes, and we have a lineup of parodies for tomorrow night, something pretty special. We're calling it our 100th anniversary special. Here's a sneak peek.
This is the Money, Power, and Politics 100th Anniversary Special.
And there they go!
It's the early frontrunner Jeb Bush by a mile. Ooh, he ran out of energy. And there goes Trump. Unbelievable. George Romney's boy Mitt rolls out a formula to try and stop the Trump machine.
A business genius he is not.
Meanwhile, Herbert Hoover is booed off the convention stage as he urges delegates to vote their conscience.
And cast his ballot in the way that his judgment and his own conscience shall dictate.
As panic sets in, a young Orson Welles admits it was all just a hoax.
We're deeply shocked and deeply regretful about the results.
Now it's all over but the singing.
Okay, well, there you have it. That's just, again, a sample. We're working up quite a bit tomorrow. It's going to be a lot of fun, our special satire episode. Don't miss it. Tomorrow night, our 100th anniversary special. That's our show for tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow night. Take care.